Well, folks, in today's live stream, we're going to be trying to fix this vintage Athearn John Deere locomotive. This was sent in a couple years ago from this guy by the name of Joshua. And when I tried to test it at the time, it didn't run whatsoever, which seemed really strange because generally these Athearns are pretty reliable. But yeah, it wasn't working. So I figured, there must be some sort of an electrical issue inside it. And it turns out there is, but it might not be the fault of Athearn. If we open this up and have a look on the inside here, you can see there is no drive shafts and there's no metal linkage between the two. If you look on the commutator as well, it's remarkably clean. So I don't think that this is a matter of this locomotive failing at some point. I think somebody needed some parts for a project and they just decided to part this locomotive out. I don't know, maybe they were a bigger fan of Caterpillar locomotives, who knows. But either way, I'd like to get this thing going again. I did a poll a couple months ago and there was a lot of support for this thing. I wouldn't have really figured an engine like this would have garnered so much interest, but yeah, a lot of people want to see it repaired. So I'm going to do my best. I did already go looking for some drive shafts, and unfortunately I don't have any that kind of fit this hexagonal style of flywheel. So we're going to have to do some MacGyvering to get that all together, but I don't think it's impossible. At least we've got all the parts here, and everything looks to be in really good shape. I mean, since these parts hardly have any wear on them, everything turns really well. So anyways, I guess we'll start digging into this. We'll have a quick look through the gearboxes, just make sure everything's in order. Again, considering how good they look, I'm not too worried about them, but it's always just a good idea just to be, 100% sure. And then we'll try to sort out some sort of a power plant for this locomotive and see if we can get it running again. I've got some different ideas of how this could be fixed, but I'm not really sure how to proceed. So we'll keep trying stuff until it works. And Trish Stubler says, hi, a new subscriber. We love your videos. My son has started a collection of trains. His Brio collection was already pretty extensive. Well, if you thought the Brio stuff was intense, just wait until it starts collecting the HO models. So, there's a little bit of old grease there. Nothing too bad, but I should probably clean that out anyway. I think I'll remove the motor too. And yeah, we'll see if that can be sorted out. Hello from Brazil, welcome. SMT, I have a few engines that I think you'd like to have. One is an NYC FTA unit. Well, thank you so much for the offer. I've actually temporarily closed the PO box just because with not having a lot of time on my hands these days, unfortunately, I haven't been keeping on top of the unboxings as well as I would like to. And, I don't want everybody to be going and, sending stuff that, especially, they've worked hard to get the cash to send it and everything. I just don't really feel right about that. So, yeah, for the time being, the PO box is closed. But thank you so much for the offer. Anyways, here we are inside. This surface right here always needs to be kept clean on these Athearns, basically. These contacts need to basically have a good connection to ground, so that's sort of the story there. I actually really like these slightly more modern Athearns because they're held in by screws instead of the older ones, which have those inserts which kind of go rubbery over time. Jakir says the Wacko box defeated him. Too much sugar. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that thing was wild. Anyways, we'll have a quick look inside the gearboxes here. For anybody who's looking to take apart an Athearn, these are pretty easy. You just do the same thing I did. You just remove this top part, truck drops out, and you kind of work this around, the drive shafts or what have you. On some larger Athearn engines, you'll have a second clip on this side, but on these smaller ones, you just have the clip up here and a clip on the bottom, and that is pretty much all that holds the whole drive together. Just kind of snap these out. Sometimes, as these things age and the plastic becomes a little more stiff, this can be harder to do, but on these new ones, it's not so bad. Yeah, so that gearbox looks really good. I'm not too worried about that. Not even going to totally disassemble it. I'm just going to throw a little bit of oil on the teeth. let's let that circulate there. I'll throw some on the bearings as well, just because they're going to need a fair bit, and I think it should be good for that truck. A test you can always do to make sure everything is working properly without applying any weight. Just see if it will roll, and if these gears roll, see how nothing's holding it up. You know that everything is how it should be. I'll check this one too. Yeah, I think this just needs a little bit of oil, honestly. Just put a little bit right there. Let that kind of just soak into the bearings. Yeah, it's better. All right, so I'm gonna get a cloth or something, clean up that one surface right there, and we'll probably try to put the trucks back in or partially in, and then add on the new motor or whatever it's going to take to actually, repower this engine. SMT, can you do a collection video? There's definitely going to be one. I've done a few already, but they're a few years old, so obviously the collection's grown and morphed quite a bit since then, so not entirely relevant, but yeah, the big thing is just the time. Making a collection video I think it's going to be about 4 hours long or something like that. But there will be a day where I film one of those. I think that would be a lot of fun. All right, so I guess we can just drop that back in there. Get that back in place. If you really want to be precise too, it's never a bad idea just to put a tiny bit of oil in here, especially if it's conductive. Now for the power plant, I've already got something planned here because, as I mentioned earlier, I couldn't find any drive shafts which matched these or the flywheels. So I went looking around, and what I found was this very similar motor, and this is actually off a Proto 2000. Proto basically stole Athearn's designs, and then I fitted some Kato parts to it. So I'm thinking that since these are so similar, we can probably just fit the drive shafts in there. And I mean, it's remarkable just how similar these motor designs are. I mean, these are Athearn parts right here, and without any resistance, they fit right onto the Proto parts. So I think that should work pretty well. Might have to modify the drive shafts for this to work. And I also need to fix that up because, as I mentioned earlier, you need that contact system. So I guess we'll try to do that right now. Where's my screwdriver gone? If I had a nickel for every time I lost something on the channel, I'd be a much wealthier guy. How did I lose that? I literally had it in my hands just like a second ago. Oh well, I'll just grab another one, I guess. Yeah, there we go, nice flat heads. So, what we're gonna do here is take off this plate, and this is spring loaded. Put that to the side. And hopefully this will just fit right away. I don't think that there's a problem with that. I believe it has to go like this. I love how shameless Proto was about stealing Athearn's designs. Like, they didn't even bother to change the sizes of these parts. It's all the same. Well, I'm not going to complain because it makes my life a lot easier. So now that can just drop right into place. And I put that backwards. And there we go. Norman Corey, hello, Harrison. I just like to solder the wires for a better connection. I've done that on quite a few of these Athearns. For anybody who doesn't know, when you open these up, usually there's a plate which connects these two contacts here, these two posts. And it's a nice design because for taking it apart, you don't have to unsolder anything. The only thing that can be a bit of a trouble with that is that sometimes they bend and they warp and they don't do a great job. So what a lot of people, like what Corey was just talking about, are saying is that you can solder a wire between all the points here. And the advantage there is that it's a solid connection, so you're not going to have any situations where as this thing goes through corners, it's, going to lose power or have intermittent power. So It's just a good thing to know, especially if you want to convert one of these over to DCC. Joseph Foray, hi SMT, can you explain the differences between what the differences between the engines are? I've heard you mention of a pancake engine in one of your videos. What does it even look like? Excellent question. For a long time, locomotives used kind of these standard motors. A lot of them have, and this is a type of can motor, or a tunnel motor, but for a while they had what were called open frame motors, which were very similar to these. They're basically kind of mounted lengthwise like this. So the motor goes like that, connects up to a couple drive shafts, and there you go. But at one point in I would say probably the early 70s, either Bachmann or Lifelike, maybe Tyco was first. I don't know who started this, but they started using what were called pancake motors. Pancake motors are basically the exact same kind of motors that you find in slot cars. They're very budget-friendly and extremely power-efficient. And so instead of the motor being mounted like this, they turned it 90 degrees and added some gears, so you just had one power truck. So a lot of your locomotives, especially if they're lower quality from the 60s, well, late 60s, early 70s, the 80s, the 90s, even into the 2000s, used this style of motor. And like I said, they're very good from an efficiency standpoint, but they're not very strong. They're pretty low torque, so a lot of them have a massive gear reduction, and then that's how they generate enough torque to move the locomotive. They can last a while if you baby them, but the problem is, again, since they're relying on a gear reduction to create torque, if there are problems past the gearbox, like, you know, the bearings start to have issues, these fail, and you see a lot of them that get very crispy. So that's the story. And Jamestown says, I think it was Bachmann who started the pancake drive. It's entirely possible. I don't know. One of them started it, and then all the other manufacturers followed suit. Because, yeah, Tyco used the pancake drive. Lifelike used the pancake drive. Lima did. Hornby did. Even Lionel did. But some Lionel engines were rebadged Bachmanns. So, kind of is just a Bachmann again. Anyways, back onto the repair. So, as I said earlier, I got these Kato parts. Interestingly enough, these lock right into this Athearn part, so maybe Proto was not the only brand ripping off Athearn, but either way, we'll try to get this in here now. That's too long, so I guess what we'll have to do is cut this down to the right size and then replace the center maybe with a piece of heat shrink tubing. I don't know if this is going to work, but I can't really think of another idea. And Kevin Beverly says, Tyco did the power torque drive in the 70s. I'm pretty sure Bachmann and Lifelike started the pancake drive. I think Lifelike might have been late to the game, because the original Lifelike drive was basically a cheapened version of a Varney drive. And then they had a second generation, which still used an open frame motor, but it was four-wheel drive. That's what they had for a good portion of the 70s. And then I think it was at some point in the end of the 70s, early 80s, Lifelike started using the Kadar style drive. So I don't know how much material I really need to remove here, so I guess I'm just going to wing it. I've got to be careful, because if I remove too much, I might put an abrupt halt to this repair really quickly. See, we've already got two new members joining on. Let me just see. We got Timmerman765 and Ozzy Gunzel. Thank you for joining. What budget locomotives would you recommend? I would highly recommend the old Athearn blue boxes like these. If not, the older Atlas engines, those are also very good. River Rossies can be okay, but you have to be willing to work on them, just because they can be a little bit fickle sometimes. They've got good quality parts. They're just not always super reliable. I know that sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, but the parts don't usually break. They just don't stick together very well. You have like screws popping out of drivers and things like that. As for other budget brands, I actually really like the old Lifelikes. I mean, they were not the most reliable brand by a long shot, but if you compare them to like a Kadar Bachmann or a Tyco Power Torque, I do find that they are a little more reliable. So I think that might be a little bit too long, but we're getting close here. Would you recommend a Christmas in July theme? Never really thought of it, to be honest. It's funny you say that. I was just talking the other day. My grandparents used to have this cottage, and they always had like small jobs around the cottage that they needed help with, you know, cutting trees and such. And there was this guy, I can't really remember his name, but one of the funniest things was that he just loved Christmas. Like, he was obsessed with Christmas, and he'd play Christmas music all year long. So he'd be out there in the forest, like chopping down trees with, you know, Dean Martin playing in the background and stuff. And one day I asked him, I was like, why are you playing Christmas music? It's July right now. And he was like, I just love Christmas. So it's kind of a cool thing. I guess everybody finds their peace somehow. That was his. Anyways, I think this is getting pretty darn close. Let's see if that can snap into place. I just want to make sure this is all well adjusted, because it's quite important. If the drive shafts are too long, you're going to have derailing issues. You want there to be like just a little bit of play, but not so much that the drive shaft pops out. And I think that right there is right on the money. So try to pull this back out without breaking it. Make a second one that's the same size, and then use a lighter or something just to fuse it all together. On Lifelike locomotives, can you change the wheels from brass wheels? I've never done it myself, but you could probably take wheels out of a Bachmann, which were nickel silver, and throw those in there. Because the Bachmanns and the Lifelikes at one point, they were so similar that, kind of like the Protos and the Athearns, you could actually swap parts. So like the Bachmann engines had really crappy gears. So what a lot of people do, if they have a Bachmann engine that they're very sentimental about, they find a parts Lifelike engine and they steal the gears off it, because you'll have slightly better performance. But in turn, where Bachmann had better wheels than Lifelike did, you could probably swap those. All right, got to do this kind of quick. I don't want to burn or warp the plastic here. It also needs to be kind of even, just be able to hold everything in place. I'm going to cut a second piece, try to make it as close as I can to the same size. Really hope this all works. Later, Bachmann and Lifelike copied Athearn drive system like Proto did. I noticed that the parts are interchangeable. Well, Lifelike was Proto, so yeah, that makes sense, but I don't know. I haven't tried that on a Bachmann, to be honest. I'd be surprised, because I don't find the early Bachmann engines, like when they moved on from the pancake motors and they started making slightly better drives, I don't find that those are really like an Athearn. That's pretty good there. Trim a little bit off the end there. If this engine works, it's just going to be hilarious. We've got Proto, Kato, and Athearn parts all in the same engine. Athearns are getting harder to find at train shows that aren't over $20 for a blue box. I find that too. I find the prices have been going up, but I think what might also be going on is that the prices for, you know, regular stuff in the hobby, like, you know, ready to roll engines is going up. And, you know, I think maybe if you can't afford that, a lot of people are now buying secondhand. Maybe people that like 5 years ago wouldn't have wanted to buy a secondhand engine are now. Because I have found that, yeah, trying to find used stuff is a little more costly than it used to be. Anyway, we'll throw that in there. So throw a tiny bit of oil just on this worm gear. It's interesting that the later Athearn engines had plastic worm gears. A lot of the older ones were brass. What brand do you recommend for HO scale track and not the crappy easy track? I mostly use Atlas Snap Track. My switches are by Pico. As for roadbed track, there is Powerlock track, and you can find nickel silver. That stuff's okay. I wasn't terribly impressed by how it was holding together when I got that starter set. A lot of people say Unitrack by Kato is really good. I personally have never used it before, so I can't really speak, but from what I've heard from the community, it's very good. But, you know, I'll put that out as a broader question for the community. What's your favorite roadbed track? Hopefully I got the dimensions right. Agreed, Atlas is excellent. Kato is also good, but not very realistic. It depends. I find the older Kato engines are not the greatest in terms of detail, but they weren't horrible. I find Kato is really like the Toyota of model railroading. Like they've never really created anything that's like incredible, like super impressive, but they've been very good for, I think, consistently making, you know, reliable products. So maybe they're not the most realistic, but at least they run well. I think I might be a little off on the measurement here. Let's see. Yeah, I might end up having to redo this. We'll see. It's just it's so close. I feel like if it goes in a place, since it won't be at an angle, it might kind of fit together. Might just remove this light fixture if I can. Yeah, no, that doesn't want to give up. Let's do that. Well, it seems to turn fine, so I guess that's okay. If it has an issue, actually, I'm just gonna make that a bit longer. I feel like that is gonna cause problems. Have you heard of the brand Intermountain? Yeah, I've heard pretty good things about Intermountain too. I think they're quite well liked. I gotta say, I'm very impressed by my scale trains model. A lot of people have been wanting me to work with some Scale Trains products for a while, and I gotta say, I get why people really like them. And they're expensive as all hell, but in terms of how well they run, and in terms of how good the detail is, they're very good. What's the first repair job you ever did, at least that you remember? And the very first repair I ever did was a lifelike Santa Fe engine. We got on a Larkspur line in Merrickville. It was 2012, and there was this engine, and said that it didn't run on the package. And for some reason, I really wanted it, which is funny because back then I didn't really buy used locomotives, but I just spotted it, and for some reason I desperately wanted to get it. It was like $10 too, so not that bad. And got it home. I just did a bit of a cleaning on it. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I got it running. And I was so kind of psyched about that I ended up doing many more after it. There were a lot of times too where, you know, I ran into more complicated repairs and I failed pretty badly at them, but, you know, try again. And in most cases, you know, managed to get them running. And, you know, just each time you do a repair, you gain just a little more know-how. SMT, my Athearn Sand Fe keeps cutting out and the pickups are clean. Why is it doing this? Well, as I was talking about earlier, there's the contact which runs between the motor and these two poles. So I would check that and just make sure it's not all bent out of place. The other thing that you should check in on is that the motor is seated correctly, because sometimes what can happen is the little posts which hold these to the frames, especially on the older ones, they can crack, and then the motor lifts up. And if this isn't making good contact right here, the power will just randomly cut out. The engine will be fine, and then it will just randomly kind of shut down. Now, the good news with these old Athearns is that, you know, the parts are not too hard to come by. We even sell aftermarket ones, so if you have a problem, you actually have to buy parts. Unlike a lot of other brands, it's usually not that hard to. Yeah, I like how that's fitting together a whole lot more than the original one, so get some oil in there. I think if this all turns okay, try screwing down the motor. Let's get it to kind of sit in place. Yeah, there we go. Harrison, do you have any advice on wiring practices / wire training for your layout? I run my wires to a junction box and I just want to clean up my wiring the best I can. I don't have anything too fancy. In fact, a lot of my older wiring is pretty bad. Yeah, I try to minimize the amount of wire I run to my track. And I also went with I went with trailer wiring, which is way overrated, and I went with like 25 amp switches and stuff like that, like way over engineered. But my logic is that, you know, this stuff is way less likely to fail if it's over engineered. So yeah, just, I don't know, if it works, I wouldn't worry about it. Color coordinating, though, that's a lesson I wish I had learned a little bit sooner. It's, you know, making sure you have one wire which is always your positive and one which is always your negative, just because as you add more wires, it definitely makes life a lot easier for tracing stuff. Uh-oh. Looks like that popped out of place. I think I kind of bent this earlier when I was trying to get it into place. It's for wiring accessories, American Flyer stuff you see. Oh, that, okay. Yeah, I can't really say. I haven't worked with much of the American Flyer or Lionel accessories. One thing I will say for wiring up accessories, I can't speak for the O-scale stuff, but at least for HO scale, if you have one of those older DC controllers, never wire those up to your lights, because I don't know why they did this, but a lot of manufacturers decided to run, you know, 16 or 18 volts to the accessories terminal. But the problem is most accessories are 12 volts. So if you run, you know, 18 volts AC or 16 volts DC, your bulbs are going to burn out really fast. So what I've done is just dedicate an entire controller to the accessories, and you run, you know, like 12 volts I even run a little bit less. Sometimes I run like 10 volts, and will expend the lifespan of your bulbs by an awful lot. I don't think you could run your wires as far because DC doesn't transfer as well as AC does, but at least the lights will last a long time, especially if they're in something like a building where they're hard to change. I really wonder why the manufacturers went with 18 volts. If anybody worked with one of these companies or they know why, please leave it in the comments. I'd love to know. Don't you have a Lionel rotary beacon? I have a Lionel tower. I think it used to be a rotary beacon, but the rotary part was long gone by the time I got my hands on it, so not much of a thing anymore. Have you had any train shows near you yet, or anything worth going to? Yes, I've been to a few over the last few months. I filmed them all too. They're going to be in future videos, and I did end up buying some stuff, so yeah, there's going to be some content about that on the way. Today was exciting too. Got a call from a family friend, and they were clearing out this old storage shed that they had on their property. Found a great big box full of old Lionel trains, so I went over there and I picked that up. I haven't looked through the box yet. I don't know what's inside it exactly, but from what I could see on the top, it looked like there's some really cool things, so I think that that's going to be a lot of fun. There's a lot of O-scale fans on the channel, and they're always saying, oh, you don't do enough O-scale content, so I guess there's going to be more of that on the way. I don't know why, but I think I've mismeasured the drive shaft a second time. You can hear my grandfather saying, measure twice, cut once, measure twice, cut once. See if I can get this right. Would you ever consider getting your own booth at a show? I've done it before at the, not the Prescott train show, but at the OVA flea market. I was there. I was just giving stuff away, just trying to kind of create some space, but it was a lot of fun. I actually ended up meeting a lot of people that day. Some people who actually watch this channel too, which was pretty cool. I've got it wrong again. What's my favorite locomotive? I guess it would be the GS4s, just because they're still in existence. I mean, I love the Hiawatha. The Hiawatha is a terrific engine, but fortunately there aren't any more of those around, so yeah, it's the GS4s. We'll go with that. SMT, did you know that Tyco Power Torques made in 1975, the first year they were made, are slightly more reliable than the later ones? That's why your Tyco Santa Fe C630 runs so well. I wasn't aware that 75 was the year that happened, but yeah, I have seen some of the original Power Torque drives. I think the really early ones, if I'm not mistaken, might have actually been made in the United States, and yeah, they're definitely better. I still think the MU2 is a way better drive. I wish they had just stuck with that, but it's kind of funny how they sort of de-evolved in that way. Like you would think after so many years of making them that the Power Torques would have gotten better. Grab yourself a tape measure so you don't have to deal with this again. I know you have one in the basement. I definitely have a tape measure. I think the heat shrink, well, it's in the name, it shrinks. So I think that may be why I keep mismeasuring this. But this time I went way over the recommended size. So I don't think I'm going to have the same issue. Or at least I hope not. Yeah, that looks good. Just joined the stream. Was this actually mass produced? Yeah, they made train sets with the John Deere sets. Athearn made a few of the kind of grocery store sort of train sets for a while. I don't think that they make train sets anymore, but at one time. It's too bad because, you know, this is for a starter set. Like, this is very good. So anyways, finally got the drive all sorted out. Everything is turning as it should, so hopefully it will all run okay. Right now what we got to sort out is the whole electrical system, because we got this light, and we got the 2 posts right here, and the motor. So we need to get that all wired in there. And I'd also like to do a bit of cosmetic work on the locomotive. It's missing both of its horns. Side frames are completely gone, so yeah, it needs some love. Now, I've already got this wire right here. Small piece of advice for anybody who decides to do the wire upgrade, I guess we'll call it. Make sure you get something that's obviously thick enough to handle, you know, 3 amps or so, but not so thick that it's not flexible. Because if you put a really stiff wire in here, what will happen is it will actually kind of manipulate the trucks. And then when you try to run one of these engines into a corner, the force from the wire will actually cause it to derail. So just something to note. I learned that lesson the hard way back when I was working on these in the earlier days. So I'll wire it like that and put a little break right there. So I'll do it like that. I'm not really sure how I want to incorporate the light fixture. I don't know if I want to run a wire up here and then connect it down there, or run a wire down here and then kind of have it backtrack up here. I feel like it's going to look a little awkward anyway. I'll remove some of this metal just so that there's less to kind of get in the way. And Davey Digger says you're correct. The first run of power torques were made in the United States. They had stronger magnets, plus the pivot gear was made of brass instead of pot metal. Huh. I guess they must have just been going for a cheaper manufacturing process or something, because it just seems so strange that if they had something like that down pat, they would decide to make it worse. Okay, so I think we'll run that to there, and then I'll just run a little piece of wire back up for the light. I'm going to my first train show soon. Any tips? I'm very excited. Well, there's not much you need to know about going to a train show. I guess the only thing I will say is bring some cash with you, and if you see something you want, never be afraid to negotiate. And I find a lot of times people are, if you ask nicely enough, are willing to kind of move around on prices, especially if it's something that's used. And yeah, there's a lot of times where, I don't know, something seems out of reach price-wise, and do a bit of negotiating and you can get what you want. Get her there early there, Murdoch. Is that a Titanic reference? All right, I'll break out the soldering iron, see if I can get this all sorted out. Maybe this thing will run. I'm getting my layout started this year. I must be excited about that. Still remember building this layout for the first time, and brings back so many fond memories. Recently, I got a DV cable, so I've been going through the family's old home videos and found a couple of like my very first train sets. So I'm thinking in 2026, probably do some sort of a video where, I don't know, I try to find everything out of my original collection and try to run it alongside the clips of my very first train set. One thing I should note, if you want to solder one of these for DCC, either solder it right in the middle like I have here, as far away from the plastic as possible, or if you really want to be careful, just remove this metal part and solder it somewhere else, because I always see people soldering right on the end here, and if you solder right on the end, while this is attached, since this is spring loaded, the spring will push up, and this is hot and it will go right through the plastic, and then, you know, good luck trying to fix that. So just something I figured I'd note. What's your luck with antique stores when it comes to looking for trains? I've never been, just asking. I've had a couple of times where I found some good stuff at an antique store. I remember back in like 2011, I found an entire lot of trains for 20 bucks at a antique shop. So that was pretty cool. And there have been a few other kind of odds and ends, like the infamous $3 engine, which were good deals. But I find most of the time antique stores are not the greatest place to buy trains, because unfortunately a lot of people who don't know as much about model railroading, they kind of overestimate the value on stuff. So sometimes, you know, you have old Tycos and things like that going for like 50 bucks, which is just insane. So if you have an antique store in your area, you know, it's sometimes worth stopping on by, but it wouldn't be my first choice for buying trains. The only thing that's really good about buying stuff from antique stores is that if you have people in your life who are not as much into the model trains, you can get to the antique stores because they're not a train store, but they might have trains. Hey, SMT, I just got the exact same locomotive a few weeks ago. Right on. Have you ever accidentally touched the soldering iron? Oh yeah, I've had a few instances of that. I find this one though, since it's nice and bulky, it's pretty easy not to have issues with. I've had more problems with soldering irons rolling off the table and landing on my legs. That's always a good time. I think this part right here is going to solder up really well. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'll take this over to the track, see if the whole thing actually runs, and if it does, then we'll try to do some cosmetic work, because I've already got some parts ready to go for this thing, and you know, to actually try to make this a nice looking engine. And Davey says, I got a Tyco Mantua Santa Fe GP20 at an antique store for $20 plus a brand new cars and a power pack along with it, totaling around $75. Do you have any advice on starting my first layout? Yes, the very first thing I do before you build anything would be to make a list of all the things you want on your layout. And if you don't know what you want, go online and get inspiration, because I find that that really kind of narrows down where you should start. The planning phase is a funny thing, you know. I think that a bit of planning is always a good thing. Planning can go a very long way, but what you don't want to do is get so caught up in the planning that you don't do anything, because I've seen that happen to a lot of people where they want to get into the hobby and they get so overwhelmed by planning it, they never actually start construction. So just keep that in mind. Anyways, well, that's not good. Okay, well, it seems to be running. I don't know if the wheels need a bit of cleaning, but I find it's a tiny bit jumpy. Well, maybe it just needed a break in, I don't know. Could also be my track, I haven't cleaned that in a while. What happened to its original motor? The original motor appears fine. I just didn't have the correct drive shafts for it. What age is a good age to start model railroading? I don't think that there is a right or wrong age to start model railroading. I mean, I started off when I was about 5 years old, but yeah, I mean, if you're younger than that, maybe it'd be a bit tricky, but if you're older than that, I don't see why not. Yeah, this motor is actually really dirty. I didn't notice that when I was installing it. See if I can find a toothpick or something, just kind of clean out the gaps on the commutator. Those are pretty bad too. I'm just getting started at almost 30. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Like I like it. I like to hear about people who say it's never too late. I've had comments from people who say that they're 80 and they started model railroading, and I think that that is right awesome. Never too late to start. Whoops. Tyco was originally going to replace the MU2 drive with a similar drive to an Athearn, but when Consolidated Foods bought Tyco, they ended up making the Power Torque instead. I would have loved to have seen the Tyco drive similar to an Athearn. I have a strong feeling it probably would have been something like an AHM. AHM was, you know, basically a cheapo Athearn. Okay, I think that that should solve any electrical issues. I'll just try to get a little bit of oil on the bearings, which unfortunately Athearn doesn't make it super easy, but let's get some in there. That should work its way in. So I think at this point, there isn't really any reason, except for removing the old horns, to not put the shell on. I don't know if there's a best way to do this, but yeah. Perfect. I recently got into 3D printing. I tried to print off some horns. The results were mixed. I mean, they're better than nothing, but I think I need to play around with my printer settings a little bit there. I'm gonna add them on anyway. Get a pin vise and drill out the holes. They look fine. Might be a little too much glue. Do you have a resin or FDM printer? I have an FDM printer. Put glue from the underside. Okay. Try not to overdo this here, otherwise it's going to leak through. So let that cure, and then I also printed out some truck covers. Those turned out a lot better than the horns. Like, to me, that's acceptable. Wonderful. So I think we'll try to get them on like that. Score up the metal, score up the plastic, and then just hope like heck they hold on really well. At least this is like, you know, a relatively large surface, so I think it should work pretty well. You should look at resin printers for parts like that. They'll do a much better job. That's what I've heard. I'm certainly not against the idea of getting a resin printer. The only thing I didn't like about the resin printers is that you have to get some sort of an exhaust system. This resin's pretty toxic, and I wasn't really sure in the basement here where I'd hook up such a thing to, you know, pipe it outside. So I'm gonna need to do some more research on how to run a system like that, but eventually that would be that'd be a good thing. I've worked with resin before, not exactly the same kind of resin that they use for 3D printing, but like fiberglass resin. And whew, you really do need good ventilation. I was working in a garage and I had to have like 3 fans going and, you know, wearing a respirator because it's pretty strong. Have you tried Super Loctite Gel? I've tried something from Loctite. Sure works well. Just give that glue something to grab onto. I know it looks terrible just scratching up all this nice metal, but it's not really going to be seen anyway. How are your boat restorations going? The 85 bow rider is doing the best it has. It's running great. I actually ran it 3 days in a row and had tons of different people out on it, so that was a lot of fun. As for the 1969 Sea Ray, I still need to do some work on that. The engine is, well, I haven't actually tried to start the engine this season, but last year when I had it out, it wasn't running all that great, so I think I need to retime it. Easier said than done. Most have filters on them. They aren't perfect, but as long as you don't have a bunch of them with some airflow, they should be fine. Well, the airflow, the basement's good because it's a big space, but the ventilation down here is not that good. If your dryer is in your basement, you could tap into the exhaust system for the vent. Unfortunately, it's upstairs. I'm sure there's some way I could run an exhaust system outside, but I would just have to find the right spot. SMT, whoop, that comment just disappeared. Have you ever electrocuted yourself with a faulty wire on a locomotive? I have been shocked a couple times by sharp metal on the engine, like a tiny little shock, but it's very tricky too, because first of all, the power in the track is DC or DC squared, and the voltage is very, very low. So there's something, maybe there's a way that mains current could get to the track if a transformer failed, but I don't, like, the transformer would have to fail really badly. I don't even know if that's possible. But yeah, when I was making the video running trains in snow, there were so many people saying, how did you not get electrocuted? Don't water and electricity not mix? It's like, yeah, they don't, but not much voltage there. Set up the printer on the patio. There's an idea. Set it up on the front porch outside. The neighborhood will love it. You're like, oh, there's Harry out doing his printing. Be all fun and games till somebody comes along and steals it. Tyco was originally not a budget brand. They were supposed to be high-end. Consolidated Foods tried to reinvent Tyco and make it into a budget brand. Okay, I didn't know that. I always thought Mantua was supposed to be... I knew they weren't dirt cheap, but I always thought that they were supposed to be kind of like a family-friendly brand in that regard. SMT, I've been working on a Lego 4-wide chassis system special set. Once it's done, the setup will be able to be purchased on Bricklink. I was wondering if you wanted one of these first sets, along with some other YouTubers. Well, thank you for the offer. I don't really work with Lego trains, but I'd love to have a look at it, just see what you've built. If you want to send me a link. Hey, SMT, I have an old locomotive that sparks a lot. I don't know how to fix that problem. I tried sanding down some certain parts, but it doesn't work. It just keeps sparking. Well, sparks could be caused by a lot of different things. Maybe you have a short circuit. It kind of sounds like that. So I'd look to see if metal is contacting other metal parts. But like if it's an old Athearn and it's got the steel wheels and the sparks are small, they're not super bright, that's just normal. The old Athearns and, well, frankly, any engine that has steel wheels, they just make some sparks as they go around. I hate anything with traction tires. Traction tires are good for certain applications, but yeah, I tend to agree. There are a lot of drawbacks. It's kind of like a way of cheating, the traction issue. But they don't last long, and then you have to like look for replacements and stuff. So they're, and they don't let the drive spin free. Like the nice thing about engines that don't have traction tires is even though their pulling capacity isn't great, if they get stuck on something and you don't notice and the engine's being fed power, it's probably not going to kill the motor. But if you have traction tires and your engine gets stuck, those traction tires are going to be doing everything they can to try to, keep the traction, and the amount of strain that puts on the drive, especially the motor, is no bueno. Of all the cheesy brands from the 70s and 80s, which do you think was the best? Cox Model Power, AHM, Lifelike, or Tyco? My favorite is Lifelike. I really like the older Lifelikes, even from the 70s and 80s. I will say, though, that in terms of reliability, I think that Model Power probably had the upper hand. I have a lot of old Model Powers, and they're pretty tough engines for what they were being sold for. In fact, especially the ones that were made by Roco. The only thing I've really seen fail on those sometimes is the motors, but other than that, they're pretty darn solid. I've been watching for 4 years now. Keep up the amazing work. Thank you. Have you thought about putting a guard or something on the side of the yard back of the Hershey factory so a train doesn't fall off the table? Yeah, eventually, if you look up by the freight yard over here, you can see I've got that kind of like wood fascia with a little bit of plexiglass. Eventually, I want that to wrap around the entire layout, but I'm not really sure if the current design is how it's going to stay, which is why I haven't put anything there. Like, I've considered adding some extra tracks beside the Hershey factory and also expanding that corner on the mountain layout. So I just don't want to build something and then end up having to take it apart to make something else. Don't remind me how I've bought an AHM steam locomotive at Smart so much it almost set my house on fire. I find the main issue with the older AHMs was the motor. Like the drive system, I find the gearboxes and everything, I haven't seen any of those fail, but I have seen some of the motors fail, specifically the commutators. And I think it's because, you know, if you look at like an Athearn, you can see, you know, they went with a really thick commutator. There's a lot of space there. I'll see if I can find, well, I have one right here. Here's an old AHM, and like, look how tiny the commutator is in comparison. And look how small the brushes are. So you got half the surface area, and I find these are under so much stress that they just start to arc, and then funny things start happening with them. But if you upgrade the older AHMs to a 5-pole motor, I find they actually run pretty well. And since all the gears were plastic and everything, they don't wear down too quickly, and they're pretty quiet, so they did that part right. I don't know if that's going to hang on. If they break off, I'll re-glue them. Oh, I should put a coupler on this too so we can actually test the pulling capacity. Oops, I forgot to put this clip back on. Let's see if I can feed it down into the locomotive. How's Nerf Cat? Nerf Kitty's doing pretty well. I'm not going to say what, but there might be another Nerf animal added to the channel soon. Should have paid more attention earlier and not missed this step. Now I have to do this weird repair. Doesn't really need this clip, but I'd just prefer to have it in there. Oh, yeah, I think that's it. Nope. Also a hair or something. Nerf snake. It's not a snake. A Nerf Avark. What the hell's an Avark? It's a Nerf capybara. Do you have a Tech 3 controller? I do have a Tech 3. Nerf snake. I can't be a snake. Indiana Jones would not approve. Nerf beetle. Nerf shark. Kind of wonder if I'm making my life a lot harder than it needs to be, and you know, if I just took this apart, maybe it would just clip in a little bit easier. I don't know. So always when you're trying to fiddle with this sort of stuff, it always tends to be a bit of a challenge. But the question is it harder to take this gearbox apart? We'll find out. Nerf chinchilla. I gotta say, I'm certainly not disappointed with everybody's guesses. Like, I don't know how many people have all the pets which have been mentioned so far, but it's impressive. Nervous husky. It's Weave the coyote. So I'm going to need to re-glue this, but I got to say, look how good a job the glue did. It actually pulled out part of the plastic, so we know it's good. Tyco did eventually sell locomotives made by Mahano, but they didn't sell well because Tyco's reputation had been destroyed by that point. I've heard about that. I think that Tyco only made those engines for 1 year or something like that. But apparently the like the Tyco Chattanooga, the last one from 1993, those are very sought after because they have the look of a Tyco, but they've got the quality of a Mahano engine, which is quite a bit better. Mahanos are not perfect, but I've had very good experience with them. And I've heard similar stories from a lot of people in the community. Back in the 2000s, the grocery store chain President's Choice, they would have Mahano make the Christmas train sets. They'd sell them for $100, which honestly was not a bad deal considering, you were getting some pretty nice steam engines. But the crazy thing is, after Christmas Day, they would drop the price by 50%. So you'd have guys who were in the hobby going to the, all the President's Choice stores like Loblaws and buying all the train sets out, and then they would pull the locomotives out of the set and they'd sell them on eBay because the locomotives were worth more than the train set, which was always kind of the funny thing. PC Insider train sets got me into the hobby. I never had one of the sets myself. I did have the 6060, which was the exact same engine, which was included in that set, and they're nice engines. You need a tray to keep your parts when you remove. It drives me crazy when parts roll around on the workbench. Well, I've got this thing, this little automotive tray. It's a good idea. The only thing I don't like about it is that, as you can see, it's got a magnet on the bottom, which is good for this because you can, throw stuff in here and, those are not going to drop out. The only problem is that, if I have this thing just kind of floating around on my table here and I remove a part that I don't put in here, it can go like that, and then I spend a lot of time looking for things, so I don't know if it always helps me. I don't know if I've given this enough time to dry. I also need to figure out a way to get this coupler installed. Nerf Moose. Nerf Moose would be awesome. Nice. Well, I think it's looking pretty good. Let's see if this John Deere will make America proud. Any of you out there ever see the I Love Toy Trains special of the John Deere stuff? I think it was called John Deere Heaven. So before I do, I'll just bring this train around. We'll see if it can actually haul these cars. I'll probably remove a few. It seems like a bit of a heavy train. Trying to be so gentle with the truck covers, the side frames, because they're definitely not on there very well, just because the glue is still drying. But anyways, uh-oh. Okay, it's kind of derailed. Wow, this thing pulls. I mean, the Stewart, which has 2 more driving axles, was struggling, and so far it's doing a pretty good job. Oh, it's struggling. Struggling. Well, it doesn't stop. I'm impressed. I didn't think it would be able to haul this many cars. I guess the statement's true. Nothing runs like a Deere. For a brief point in my life, I was actually working at a farm, and we had a John Deere. It wasn't anything too impressive. The main tractor was a New Holland, but we had this smaller tractor which was used for just hauling muck around and stuff like that. I think it was a 2210, probably from the early 2000s, let's say a 2002. And it was a pretty good unit. It would actually go faster than it felt like it should. When you got up to a certain speed, it would be wobbling all over the place. But never let us down. It's always starting on cold days. You cycled the glow plugs enough times, so. Try pulling the cars off the main line, see what the top speed of this engine is. It's probably pretty good. Just gotta make sure I got enough room in the yard to run this train up. Grease on the wheels. Maybe, I don't know. Q&A session would be a good idea. Yeah, I could definitely do one of those. I kind of consider all these live streams sort of a bit of a Q&A if anybody has any questions, but maybe it'd be good to do one where I'm just answering questions, that way I'm not getting distracted by what train is derailing or what I'm doing with clip-on parts and stuff like that. Wrong track. Gotta get about 3 more cars into the yard. Let's see, is that enough? Close enough. All right, let's see how fast this thing can go. Yeah, it's about what you would expect for an Athearn. An Athearn with a proto motor, I should point out. Notch 8, yeah. All right, let's see how healthy the drive is. How does it like slow speeds? Is that about 2 volts right there? It's impressive for like a second, and then starts the cog. But it runs well. What happens if the locomotive alone gets stuck in the tunnel and you can't get it out? Well, all the tunnels on the layout have access points. So there's a hole on this side, one on this side. If it gets stuck in here, I can either reach my arm in through here, or I can remove this and pull the trains out. I've had a lot of stuff get stuck in the tunnels before. It's not a lot of fun trying to get it out, but that was all considered. Do you make boat content? I haven't yet. I should start making some boat content, working on outboard motors or something. If you clip off the tails of horn hook couplers, they can work with almost any knuckle coupler. Yeah, I've heard that that works well. Another thing some people do is they take a car, kind of like this one over here. Just throw a knuckle coupler on one side, a horn hook on the other, and just kind of sits in the middle. SMT boating. Yeah, SMT boat line. Maybe SMT marine, I don't know, that kind of has a ring to it. I added some boats to the layout over here. Kind of thinking of making a whole scene where, I don't know, it kind of looks like there's like an old scrapyard. I found these boats on eBay. I think they're by Bosch or something, and I like the outboards because they look like they're the old Johnson outboards. I guess elevating the layout is working well. I think it's one of the best upgrades I've done to the layout. So far, it hasn't resulted in any derailing issues, and overall, it's just a lot more comfortable to work with. Should probably run this thing in reverse as part of the break-in period. SMT shoreline, I like it. I think I might have mentioned it in a previous live stream, but there is a section of rail just outside of Gatineau. Well, I think it's like 30 minutes outside of town, but the railroad actually runs beside a waterway. So I'm thinking at some point of doing a video where I launch the boat, try to time it with the weekly train that comes up to the mill, and see if we could do some rail fanning on the water. I think that would make a really cool video. How long do you break in your new locomotives? When it's a brand new engine, I usually try to run it for an hour in both directions, right out of the box. As for breaking in used locomotives, you are supposed to break in an engine after you've done servicing like I have, but unless you've changed, like swapped gears and stuff like that, I find generally the parts are all pretty well worn in with each other, so I don't find that that's quite as important. Sometimes they smooth out though. I mean, there are videos I've done where I've fixed something up, I've thrown it on the track, and when I first get it running, it's a little bit rough, and then after like, 10-15 minutes, once it warms up, everything kind of seats into place, and then it runs well for the rest of the time. I go to Edmonds Kingston Ferry Terminal. It's nice to rail fan down there. It's really too bad that the HCW railway wasn't still active, because that runs along the Gatineau River, and it runs along the entire river, so theoretically you could launch your boat, drive it down to the dam, and then wait for the train and then drive it up. And the train only went like 30 kilometers an hour, so at least my boat would definitely be capable of keeping up with that. What's the hardest brand of steam locomotives to work on? I haven't worked on any Broadway limited steam engines, but I think those would be tough. I can tell you the Athearn Genesis steam locomotives are a nightmare to work on. The Bachmans can be tricky. I will say, despite everybody talking about how challenging brass engines are, this Sunset model was actually pretty easy to open up. That one wasn't too bad. But yeah, I have an Athearn Genesis Mikado, and trying to open that thing up, boy oh boy, I had no idea what I was up against. I don't even... Here it is, this engine right here. That thing was really tricky. Somebody actually sent one in recently, probably for the same issue, and I'll go through it again, but at least this time I learned some stuff from the last one, so hopefully I won't screw it up. I mean, I didn't screw up the other one, it does run, but I just had a much tougher time taking it apart than I was hoping. What's the CN engine beside the Hiawatha? It's some kind of Alco. I want to say a C430, but I don't think that that's right, because it's got the 6 axles. So I think it's a type of 630, but it doesn't have the... It's got the lower nose. And this is a heavily modified... it's got an AHM drive originally, like an AHM frame and AHM gears and stuff. Somebody swapped it out with an Athearn motor, and then I ended up replacing that with a Bachmann motor plus a Bachmann soundboard, so it's a sound-equipped engine now. Anything lit up on the layout? It does have a lighting system. Let me find the plug. I'll try to see if I can get it all to work. Just gotta adjust my tripod here. It's a little bit short. There we go. The controller's turned on. Where's the wire? All right, I found the wire. Bingo. So the house is lit. I'll turn up the lights because they're kind of hard to see on camera here. I'll just also shut some of them off. Does that help? Yeah, so the house is lit, that place is lit. A few of these are not working, actually. Got a bit of a power outage. Yeah, all the buildings on this side should all be lit up, so I'm guessing a wire's been severed somewhere under the layout. It's just bouncing around some of the wires. That place is lit. The barn is lit. It's kind of dim. Trying to figure out. I really need to redo all my wiring because it's all from like 2008. Nerf doing the wiring, yeah. Time for Nerf Cat to earn his keep. I'm gonna have to send him down there with some pliers and some solder, and he can fix up my layout. Let me see if I can get these working. Anything flickering? Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna succeed getting those wires connected up in a timely fashion. There's a lot of loose ends down there, so gonna have to do some work on that at some point. But I think what I really need to do is just run some proper wires and just rewire every single building on here, because like the wiring is just so bad. I don't think that trying to remedy it is really gonna do much good. That's basically what I did with rewiring the track. Like, the track was all stuff I wired when I was 12, and this year I completely redid all that, and it's a much cleaner system. Like, you know, the mess of wires before, and now I've actually got like some wire management right here. Look at how much better the, like, you know, really solid 20 amp connections. Probably never gonna fail. And but then, you know, you got like crap like this. Look at this junk. And like some of these wires, like, they don't even go anywhere, so all that needs to get redone. Anyways, we'll get some of the lighting going again here. I think that this has quieted down a little bit since we started running it. It's amazing how just letting the oils and everything circulate helps. You run it on the mountain layout. Let me just make sure nothing's blocking it, and yeah, we'll run it through a few times, and then I think I'll call it a night here. Just gonna stop the train so I can align these switches. Okay, so we got that one. I need to throw the switch over there. Why don't you ever put cabooses on? I have before. I'll throw one on the back of this just for kicks. Looks, well, actually the coupler on that's pretty bad. Maybe we'll hang on, I don't know. Oh, actually, That's got a much nicer coupler. That will hold on. It's crazy to think there was a time down here before I had these lights, the lamps, 100-watt bulbs and stuff. You know, it kind of looked like it did right here, like super dim. SMT, did you know that you could turn HO scale warehouses and factories into modern lofts and apartments? Well, it would be realistic with how many towns seem to look these days. It's a town in Maine, Saco. It's actually where they make the rail cutters. These things, they have a factory up there, but they've got a bunch of really old mills, and that's what they're doing. They're making all these apartment complexes and things like that. The lights give a movie maker feeling, yeah. Sounds like the locomotive is hitting something. I don't know if it's just bumping cars, but something's not good. Does the railroad crossing sign work? It lights up, but the lights don't flash. Try to capture the train coming through here. SMT effects limited. Just out of uber nerd curiosity, what printer do you use? I have a Creality K1 Max. I think since this locomotive is an old Athearn, it would probably be capable of running on this layout. Let it go through and I'll try to pick it up on the next run. Yeah, the switches look kind of aligned. I haven't cleaned the track on this layout, so I don't know how this is going to go, but try it anyway. Gee, this is bad. Walmart carries Fast and Furious cars in HO scale. Huh, that's funny. I wouldn't be surprised to see like Hot Wheels cars at a Walmart or something, but yeah, for them to have HO scale, that's pretty unique. Okay. And this is what happens when you let the brass track sit for a while. I think we need more voltage. That always helps things. 12 volts? I don't think so. More power. Yeah, I think we call that the Jeremy Clarkson method. You should buy the Fast and Furious cars and replicate it somewhere on the layout. It's a neat idea. Super derailed. I was really hoping that was going to re-rail itself. Let's try it again. Didn't like that. I think unfortunately the side frames are catching on stuff. Yeah, that's okay. There's the problem. So what's going on? I didn't even think about this. On the 22 radius curves, it can handle that because this only needs to rotate so much. But you can see on this rear truck right here, like there's not a lot of mobility right there. It's coming in contact with like parts like that. So gonna need to make some adjustments before this can run on the layout. Because yeah, as I was trying to place that on the track, I could feel it kind of getting locked up. But at least it works. Are you going to add a freight yard? I think I am going to add something a little bit more significant than the current yard. I was thinking about maybe on this side of the layout, like add a switch right here, add a hill. Really wide corner comes down under the layout. And then, well, about a foot under the layout, we just have like a massive yard which extends under this whole area right here. You actually like run full-size trains. But just try to make the hills and everything really gradual so that you could actually, you know, run stuff like this, like at least 20 car consists down it. SMT, would you recommend going with N scale or HO scale or O scale? It really depends how much space you have. If you have a lot of room, O scale can be a lot of fun. There's something very like exciting about like the size of the O scale stuff. It's all very tactile. If you have a little less room and you want operations, I'd probably go with HO just because it's kind of a nice blend of O scale and N scale. If you don't have a lot of room and you want to do operations or you want to have a large freight yard or something like that, definitely go with N scale because 4x8 and N scale goes a very long way. Goes okay in HO, and then by the time you get to O scale, 4x8, it's not a lot of room, so just keep that in mind. Anyways, I think I'll finish off the video there. Thank you all so much for joining in. I had a lot of fun doing that repair and pretty happy with the results. It seems to be running quite well. So yeah, I think we'll call it a, well, live stream. I want to say video, live stream there. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. Have a